You're listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
I'm pushing them back from the saloon to the airwaves. I'm spitting it raw. Constitution's my compass, liberty's law. Big gulfs creeping, shadows on the land. Feds with the schemes trying to bind up my hands. But I'm the Sherpa, guiding through the storm. Red, white, and blue, yeah, freedom's reborn. They spin their tails, but I see through the haze. Media maggots, lost in the maze. I'm calling it out, no fear in my soul. This patriot's fire ain't losing control. Conservative Sherpa leading the fight. Torch in the dark, burning bright in the night. Stand for the truth, won't bow to the game. Sherpas, come and remember my name. Sherpas rising. Let this judge is twisting, trying to steal our rights, but I'm locked and loaded, got them in my sights. From J6 to the border, they're selling us out. I'm screaming from the mountain, hear my rebel shout. They mock the flag, but I'm holding it high. Stars and stripes forever under God's open sky. No globalist chains gonna cage this land. I'm the Sherpa with the truth in my hand. They push their agenda, but I'm breaking the mold. Their promises empty, their hearts ice cold. Chicago's bleeding, borders torn apart. I'm fighting for the people with the warrior's heart. Conservative Sherpa leading the fight. Torch in the dark, burning bright in the night. Stand for the truth, won't bow to the game. Sherpas, come and remember my name. Sherpas rising. I've walked the line, 41 years, badge on the grind, now I'm on the air. My voice like a blade, cutting through the lies that the traitors made. Hurricanes rage, but we're standing tall. Sheriffs of the Constitution answering the call. From the saloon to the heart of the fray, we're taking back America, no more delay. Conservative Sherpa leading the fight. Torch in the dark, burning bright in the night. Stand for the truth, won't bow to the game. Sherpas, come and remember my name. Sherpas the static, hear my voice resound. Conservative Sherpa, freedom's battleground. Berserk, Bobcat, rules will never kneel. For God and country, this fight is real.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I am BZ, one each, right here in the saloon. And so I say to you all, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting from an actual free state in Nofe, N-O-F-E, Idaho. I am what? What am I? Who am I? I am your conservative Sherpa. I am guiding you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. And I just want to remind you that what you're about to hear tonight consists of my opinion and my opinion only for the next, say, hour, hour and a half, and also that of my guest. Have I got a guest for you? You, and you, and you, and you, and you, and all of you. I have a great guest for tonight. I am doing the job the American media maggots won't. I am fundamentally changing America one leftist diaper at a time. We don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversations. We still serve stiff drinks right here in the saloon, along with, let's see, facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, clarity, tradition, and common sense for normal people. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the saloon, where the speech is free, but the booze is not. Tonight, however, no politics. I am not doing politics. Oh, have I got a great guest for you tonight. But before we go there, let's talk to Jersey Joe. Jersey Joe, you have a Mark 1 Model 1 announcement. What is that? Pray tell, senor.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to come on here and make this announcement. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I teased this announcement on your show.
Did you? I am privy to having been the first. Thank you.
And I haven't even tweeted this out. No social media, no nothing. This is the first time besides our chats that anybody will know about it.
Okay.
So
tell me forthrightly, Mr. What's up? What's up?
By everybody get ready. Stargate fans included.
What's up? So what's up, sir?
On June 27th, 9 p.m. Eastern, River Common Sense welcomes a very special guest, Joseph Molazzi, executive producer and writer behind Stargate, SG-1, Atlantis, and the Stargate universe. We're diving into behind-the-scenes stories, sci-fi building, and the legacy of one of the greatest TV franchises. Don't miss the Galactic Conversation, only on SHR Media, and streaming live across Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch, and with me, now, Kick. June 27th, 9 p.m. Be there or get beamed out.
Or be there or be rectangular.
That too.
So, okay, what is this Kick of which you talk?
It's just another streaming service like YouTube. I figured I'd give it a shot, so I added it to the list of streaming sites.
Okay, well, from me to you and all in between, we were talking off the air before we started, and you will be back next Thursday to talk and remind people of that again, because the very next day, next week, on
a week from
Friday, that's the day that you'll be talking to that guy.
Yes, and tomorrow I have my climate change special.
Okay. There's nothing special about climate change, except if you say that it is. Jersey Joe, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, BZ.
You take,
and I'll be watching it.
Oh, okay. I took you off the stage, and all of a sudden you said something. Son of a bitch! Don't do that to me. Okay, see you, Joe. Anyway, I am back, and I am here with a great guest. Okay. There's a story behind this. There's a story that I have for everything. And my guest tonight is unique in every sense of the word. And whereas I find a lot of guests on the internet, I had to only drive 2,114 miles in order to meet this one. So, yeah, I know. Yeah, what the hell were you thinking, BZ? So people who watch the show, okay, they know that I'm interested in Bigfoot, Sasquatch phenomenon, and I've spoken many times with a guy that I've told you about, Alan Thomas, who is a Bigfoot paranormal UFO researcher and investigator kind of guy. And I've also spoken to a gentleman by the name of Nate Rudd, who's a Washington resident who's had his own very own encounter with Bigfoot, and Edward Monge, who's a filmmaker who documented Nate Rudd's experience, as well as a whole bunch of other experiences. Yes, multiple of multiple. So Mrs. BZ and I ended up renting a car, and we drove from far north Idaho, stopped overnight in Billings, Montana, and we continued on into Broomfield, Colorado, a place we'd never been before, in order to attend the May 24th B.I.G. conference, the Bigfoot Investigative Group. And that's when I do this again. See, I point to my tiara. See? Tiara. And I got this hat from the Bigfoot Investigative Group. So anyway, we attended the Bigfoot Investigative Group conference, And there's a highly respected doctor of anthropology and anatomy who showed up there, who was slated to speak, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Jeff Meldrum of Idaho State University. So anybody who's ever watched just about any show on Bigfoot, like ever, knows who Dr. Meldrum is. And what we discovered is that he's a super guy. And in case you don't think that had actually happened, BZ would be nothing if he didn't have documentary and photographic proof. And there's Dr. Meldrum and myself. The guy, the good-looking guy is on the right, just to remind you. So there isn't a kinder, and I think, Dan, you'd agree with this, there isn't a kinder, more gracious professor in existence. And his presentation was with the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film, laid out in super great detail and precision from the perspective of an anthropologist and an anatomist. You watch that presentation, you see that presentation, and I guarantee you that you're going to be concluding that there's no way whatsoever that anybody that was there was a man in a suit. And I like to reference this as well. BZ, would you shut up and just get Dan going? Just stop it. But I like to make this comparison too. And everybody, oh, it's just a guy in a suit in 1967. Okay. Well, British director Stanley Kubrick released his film 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968. If any of you happen to see that, in which his Dawn of Man sequence, which was the last filmed in that movie, was shot on a British MGM soundstage, and they used ectochrome transparencies of Africa projected from behind and created by special effects. This guy was a wizard for years, Douglas Trumbull, another British guy. And so they hired mimes to play the apes, and a guy named Dan Richter played the lead ape by the name of Moonwatcher. So, okay, this is what's important. Stanley Kubrick spent almost $1 million of a $10.5 million film just on the Dawn of Man segment itself. The costumes were designed by a guy named Stuart Freeborn in order to create what they thought were believable, state-of-the-art. I mean, these were great movie apes. These are $1 million. They're all special effects professionals, the best available in their time in 1968. And what you take out of that movie is this movie screams to everybody, men in ape suits. That was the state of the art back then, which made Dr. Meldrum's presentation of even greater import. So if you ever have the chance, go see Dr. Jeff Meldrum when he talks about Patty, and you'll become convinced. Just absolutely. We didn't know that the speakers other than Dr. Meldrum. We didn't know Dan. We didn't know the other folks, Mike McMahon, Scott Wolf, and of course my next guest. So this Dan is a super creative, really wonderful. If you ever are in front of somebody who you just inherently know, he kind of reminds me of Alan Thomas, because Alan Thomas is just full of energy. And if you meet Dan Toth, you're going to say the dude is the same. So anyway, welcome to Dan Toth, and welcome, sir, and thanks for being here tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And before we get going, I want to say hi to everybody out there. Thanks for bringing me into your home or wherever you're at. And I want to say hi to all of our men and women in uniform. They're downrange right now. There's a lot going on. For anybody that's served in the military, I know you've been there before, and you know what it's like. And also, I want to say hi to all of our law enforcement at the local, state, and federal level, and all of our first responders. And also, I'd like to also make mention of the men and women that work in our hospitals, our doctors and our nurses. You know,
there you go.
In the ER, You know, my first wife, she worked in the NICU, and I think that the work that these people do and the dedication and the professionalism and the skill that they exude, you know, in their jobs, patching people up and fixing them. I think they're overlooked a lot in our culture sometimes, and I think that's what we'd probably call the silent warrior ethos that a lot of us embrace from the military. But that's how I want to start tonight, and I'm really happy to meet you all out there. I know there's a lot of people I don't see, but I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to the show, and I'm really happy that BZ brought me on because, you know, BZ's a great person too. I found that out when I met him at the conference in Broomfield, you know, about a month ago, and him and his wife both, we all got along great, had a lot to share, and then, you know, one thing led to another, like a lot of relationships do as they develop when you meet someone, and here we are. So hope we have a good night. Welcome again to everybody, and we'll get plugging away on this stuff. I'm sure you're going to be pretty, what I call E4. I think you're going to be edified, educated, enthralled, and entertained by what you're going to see tonight, and on top of that, enlightened, because in the 2 years since I retired from Warcom staff in Coronado in December of 22, which is going on 2.5 years now, excuse me, I started actively working as a Bigfoot investigator in January of 23. And between now and then, it's been pretty phenomenal. So thank you. And we'll get going here.
Well, the thing that folks, let me say this. I say this all the time, and it happens to be true. When I have a guest on, especially a new guest that has never been on here before, they'll say something like, okay, how long am I going to be on? Half hour, 45 minutes? I ask them, I say, hey, I'd love to have you on for an hour. And invariably, every one of them says, oh, fuck, an hour. That's too long. And then I make a promise to them generally at the beginning, and everybody that watches me knows this. I say, you know what? I'm going to gig you. I'm going to hook you. I'm going to have you on the show for 2 hours. And at the end of it, I'm going to ask you a question. And the question is going to be, didn't that seem just like 5 minutes? And the answer is true. Folks, at the end of this show, if you don't inherently and naturally conclude that Dan Toth is one of the coolest bipeds that you've ever come across, I don't know. You're not a human being. And by the way, speaking of human beings, I'm wearing my honorific shirt because I would have gotten a big shirt. I would have gotten a Bigfoot Investigative Group shirt, except, sadly, you guys don't have those shirts in Omar the Tent Maker sizes. But if you look down below, hey, there's my good friend Sasquatch. And I told this to Joe, and I'll tell it to everybody here. If I'm not wearing this pin on the show, then you know for a fact this isn't BZ. And I don't deserve to crash a press conference, and I don't deserve to crash any kind of an ICE facility. Hashtag just saying. So what I'd like to do tonight with Dan Toth is a couple of things. Go into your background, you know, kind of like where you were born and raised, education, hit your military experience, talk about your retirement, post-retirement, your creation of the Bigfoot Investigative Group, the goals of Big, you know, what do you think you're going to be doing with that? What you do in the field, this is where it's going to get cool. What you do in the field as like a direct experiencer, the big conferences, you had one in 24, you had one in 25, you're going to have another one next year, future conferences. So basically, let's start at the start. Dan Toth, would you tell us about where you grew up, your family, your siblings, parents, kind of like that stuff?
Yeah, sure. I was born in the U.S. Naval Hospital in January of 57 in Charleston, South Carolina. And my dad was a retired naval officer. Well, he was on active duty at the time. And then later on in his career, he went to Pensacola where he was stationed. And then he got stationed in Norfolk, Virginia area when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I think. I was about 5. But we moved there, and then he finished the rest of his career in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach, you know, Tidewater, Yorktown, Hampton Roads area. And I ended up growing up in Virginia Beach, Virginia. That's where we moved to, and that ultimately settled. My dad And Mom didn't want to move around a lot like is conducive to a lot of military families. So my dad geared his career where he actually was stationed in like Norfolk, Philadelphia, and Newport, Rhode Island, Yorktown at the weapons station. And he actually drove home on the weekends, and we stayed and grew up in the place where we grew up at in Virginia Beach. And I became a paper boy at a young age, and had a paper route down in Virginia Beach, Virginia, right at Chicks Beach, where the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel comes in. And also that's the location of the East Coast Naval Special Warfare SEAL teams at Little Creek Naval Amphibious Base. And I actually met SEAL team guys when I was a young kid, delivering papers on my paper route. And a couple of them took me under their wing, and, you know, I told them I wanted to be a SEAL. So when I was 14, 15, they started training me on how to work out, swim, kind of mentally and physically abuse yourself getting into cold water in the Chesapeake Bay, which I did as a kid. And, you know, I graduated from Cox High School in June of 75 in Virginia Beach. And then I joined the Navy about a month and a half after I graduated from high school in July of 75. Went to boot camp in Great Lakes, and then got stationed on a destroyer tender. It was at the USS Yosemite out of Mayport, Florida. It was AD 19. Then I got my orders to Buds after they moved that ship up to Boston for a 3-year overhaul in the yards. So I went to Buds and didn't actually make it the first time. And they stuck me in the fleet on a LSD, which was funny because I checked on board that ship and woke up the next morning, went out for quarters on the flight deck. It was old LSD, Monticello. Yeah, Monticello. And we were underway leaving Point Loma. I was watching Point Loma go by. And I was like, asked my LPO of my division that they put me in. I volunteered to go to deck because I didn't want to be a striker, didn't want to strike for a rate. He goes, I said, where are we going? He goes, we're going to Westpac. We'll be back in November, December. And I was
No problem, just a trip.
Wow, yeah. And I was like, wow, you know. And so I remember getting to Pearl Harbor. I had to call my brother who had my car up in Escondido and tell him, hey, I'm in Hawaii. So anyway, I went through that deployment, worked out a lot, and I met a lot of guys that were deployed on that amphibious ready group float at Westpac that year that were in UDT 12. I think it was 3rd Platoon, yeah. But a couple of those guys I made good friends with. They let me work out with them. And I told the skipper, the XO, my division officer, LPO chief, even the master chief of the command, he was a great guy. He was like in the Navy for 40-something years, I think. His name was Redwine. I want to go back to Buds. And it was really amazing because at the end of the deployment in November, we pulled into Pearl Harbor. And we were getting ready to pull into Pearl Harbor. And I thought, wow, you know, it's November, December already. We're at 8 months ago. But the skipper and the XO and everybody called me up to their in-port cabin. I thought I was in trouble. I did. I thought I'd got in trouble for something. And they handed me this manila envelope and said, can you explain this? And I opened it up, and there was orders and a ticket on Pan Am to go back and fly to San Diego. They got me orders back to Buds, and I flew from Pearl Harbor that November of 76 back to Coronado, San Diego, and checked in at Buds, and the rest was history. So I graduated with Buds class 92 in June of 1977. And our class motto was the chosen few. And then I got into the teams and loved it. Ended up doing 9 Spec Ops UDT SEAL deployments. I did a couple with UDT 12, which I'm very proud of. Looking back on it, I was proud as all get out to serve in underwater demolition teams before they decommissioned them there in the early 80s. And then all those UDT teams became SEAL teams on the West Coast. 3, 5, and 7 now. Yeah, I went to STVs, and then I went to SEAL Team 3, did 4 Spec Ops platoons there, where I was an intel guy, the department head, advanced communications, radio, and then also in 3 of those 4 deployments, I was the SEAL. I was the sniper, one of the 2 snipers in the 2 squads that made up the SEAL platoon. So, I had a wonderful career. 25 years went by fast, and I got into coaching football at Coronado High School at the end of my career, and my upper echelon command, people in that chain of command, they let me coach at Coronado High School, and that opened up doors where I began coaching high school. And I retired in '99, moved to Colorado, and I actually worked as a volunteer assistant for 4 or 5 years at the University of Colorado in Boulder with the football program. And I was also a speed, strength, and conditioning coach there. I did 4 years of ISSA certification as a pro athletic speed, strength, and conditioning coach, which eventually opened up doors to Pittsburgh. I got a call in May of '06 from some friends back in Pittsburgh, and they asked me to come back and work for the Naval Recruiting District as a SEAL mentor, training guys that are in high school and college to get them ready for their SEAL careers. So I took the job and I moved to Pittsburgh because I had an affinity. You guys out there, don't throw nothing at me. I'm a big Steelers fan. So I ended up going to Pittsburgh, worked for under a contract. It was at that time with Blackwater, and I did the mentor job there for 3 years, and then I got an offer to work at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Penguins, Panthers training facility as a pro strength coach, because I was training the SEAL Deppers, they were called, at their facility. They let me use the Steelers indoor practice field for the winter classes when it got cold, and a couple of people approached me and said, "Hey, you want to come to work here?" And I said, "Heck yeah." So I took the job, worked there for a couple of years.
Nice.
And then, matter of fact, one of my friends there, my boss, he's in Colorado Springs this weekend with a team that he fields for the national powerlifting championships. And I'm going down there tomorrow, spend the weekend with him during the competition. He's got a team out of Pittsburgh that he put together. Really great guy. His name's Tim Greiser. He's one of the best strength coaches I've ever met in the world. So got laid off when, we had all that economy stuff there in 11 and 12 or whatever it was.
Right.
So I went back to California. Then I ran into a retired Master Chief SEAL I knew at a SEAL reunion about 12, 13 years ago. And he told me they've got a new position coming up in program at Warcom, and they wanted me to come back and be an advanced training instructor for it. And I said, hell yeah, I couldn't turn down the job. And so I moved back to California in 13, and I worked on U.S. Naval Special Warfare staff as an advanced senior MPSE, which is a mission planning systems engineer. And I taught the SOMPI ATAC course, which was advanced communications. And anybody that's out there that's close or fresh from just getting out of the, loop, you know what ATAC is and SOMPI and stuff like that. So I did that up until December of 22, retired from Warcom. It's really neat. I got something to show you tonight.
Okay.
Warcom retirement plaque. Look.
Oh, yeah. I saw that. Okay, here's the part where I interject this.
They put the Bigfoot on it.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was way cool. The other thing I want to interject is this. Actually, a couple of things, because we're coming up to the bottom of the hour break. Dan was nice enough to ship 2 videos, and I'll be playing those videos, and then I also have some still photos that Dan can explain a little bit later. When we come back after the break, I want to start to play that video. Then I have another question that I want to ask you about a pivotal point in your life. This is generally something that I ask everybody who's been here for the first time. You were lucky enough insofar as you lived in that environment, and that was a way cool thing. But folks, I'm telling you, you have not begun to see and understand Dan. Before I go, let me put this up. Now, this is from NCX Group Security. The guy who did this is Mike Fitzpatrick. Mike Fitzpatrick is my cybersecurity expert, and I've had him on the show probably 10, 20 times, something like that. He stuck this out for you guys right now, a PSA, massive data breach alert, 16 billion login credentials from Apple, Google, Facebook, and more were leaked. He suggests change your passwords now. Use a password manager and enable 2FA to stay safe. Again, if you're on Apple, Google, Facebook, and just about anything else,
have to do that.
Your passwords were leaked. It's a 16 billion hit. And with that, I'm going to go to a break. Also, Mission Ready Men, Earl Jackson from our show. You're going to hear about him a little bit later in our promos. But anyway, I'm BZ. That is Dan. And at the conclusion of this, you're going to conclude like I already have. This is one cool dude.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Mission log. Intrigue. I mean, let's face it, who's even counting anymore? The Lost Wanderer is officially off course, chasing rogue rocket launches, fringe science, and things that probably violate causality. If it burns fuel, bends time, or makes scientists very uncomfortable, yeah, I'm probably going to talk about it. Every other Sunday on KLRN Radio, The Lost Wanderer, because space doesn't come with a roadmap, and honestly, I wouldn't follow if it did.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here's Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Hey fellas, are you mission ready? You need to check out Mission Ready Men via Earl Big E Jackson on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and noon Eastern. It's a show that equips you to navigate our society's challenges from a biblical perspective with courage and conviction. Tune into Mission Ready Men as we examine our culture through the prism of biblical truths, teachings, and how to apply them in our daily lives. Prepare to step up, stand out, and step into your role as a man as ordained by God. That's Mission Ready Men, hosted by Earl Jackson on the SHR Media Network. And get mission ready.
Want to make an immediate difference in the life of a critically ill child? You have the ability to do that right now. Make a donation to Dream Makers for Life, the organization that restores dreams to seriously ill children and their families. You can sponsor a dream pack for a child, which contains a clear PVC backpack, a dry erase board adventure coloring book, a journal, and dry erase markers to inspire a critically ill child to envision a future adventure and hope. Want to become a dream maker for life yourself? Go to dreamforlife.org. That's dreamforlife.org. Help a child. Help a family. There is always hope.
You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And I'm back. I'm BZ. I'm here tonight with my friend. I actually, look, this is amazing. BZ can actually make friends. I know. You're thinking, this is too weird. Don't even go there. What? BZ being kind and nice? It happens every now and then. And I want to mention something that I should have mentioned up front. I'm here tonight with Dan Toth. And Dan is a fabulous guy. Usually at the beginning of shows, what I do is, hey, do you have any social media stuff or any media websites or websites at all that you'd like to talk about or display? And I should have done this from the very beginning. This is Dan's site. You can go to BigfootInvestigativegroup.com. BigfootInvestigativegroup.com. And if you start at the top, here's his homepage, staff, time, media, conference. We'll talk about the conference and ways to contact. And if you scroll on down, there are photographs in there about the last conference. And then if you keep going about the 2024 conference, all sorts of cool places for you to go. They have swag. There is swag. There is a swag sighting. I cited swag. I purchased swag. I'm wearing swag. So if you want to do that, that's a great place to go. And my grandest apipalilakis for not having mentioned that up front. A couple of questions now. You glossed over a ton of stuff. And what I would like to do is go back a little bit. One of the questions I usually ask, like I said, when I talk to people for the first time on the show, is I usually ask if there was some kind of a pivotal point in your life when, for example, your life is kind of heading in one direction, and then suddenly the goalposts change, they get moved, and you suddenly find yourself going in another direction. Was there a singular or a series of pivotal points in your life, Dan Toth, where you thought, okay, I'm kind of chugging along going this way, and then boom, I'm going this way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there was. When I was growing up in Virginia Beach, I've been out in the boondocks and the woods since I was about, 7, 8 years old. My dad and uncles, and I was a staunch, hunter, fisher, wilderness lover, and outdoorsy beyond that. And we had a camper in a little lot down on the Carolina border, Back Bay, Moyock, in that area. It used to be called Lazy Bee. And I'd go down there and had a canoe. I'd be in the woods fishing and hunting. And I'd just go, that Tidewater, Norfolk area, there's a lot of that. And plus the eastern seaboard. But met a lot of game wardens down there, and they wanted me to be a game warden. These guys were really saying, hey, Dan, when you get out of high school, why don't you be a game warden? And I was really thinking about it. And then we moved from Norfolk to Virginia Beach when I was about, 10 or 11? Yeah, 68. So I was 11, 68. And when I got my paper out there in Virginia Beach at Chicks Beach, I met all those team guys. And I mean, this is a true story. It just blows my mind. These guys were going back and forth to Nam. And the thing that got me is that they were telling me stories. And, as a young kid, especially back then in the 70s, when I met these SEAL team guys on my paper out, not joking, I was standing there looking at them going, holy shit. I mean, they were big. I mean, muscles, and legs, and I thought, holy crap. And I'd heard of Navy SEALs, and my dad being a naval officer, he always told me to stay away from them. He did. He goes, you stay away from them. Yeah, he did. He told me, he said, stay away from them guys. They're freaking crazy. I was like, I thought, yeah, but I met these guys on my paper route one night when we moved there to Virginia Beach, and I was collecting for the paper, and started talking to this guy, and he goes, hey, we're jumping on, I think it was Thursday or Wednesday, whatever it was. And I'm like, you're jumping? And he goes, yeah. And I said, you mean parachuting? He goes, yeah. I said, where? He goes, over at the Chiefs Club on Little Creek. We use that field there next to the Chiefs Club as a drop zone. He goes, I think we're going to be in the air around 2:00 or whatever it was. I don't remember all the details, but I went over there on my bike because it was only about a mile down the road from the Bay Bridge Tunnel overpass on Shore Drive where I lived, and wasn't nothing for me. So I had a brown Dependence ID card that my dad got me because I was 16 or whatever it was then. Went there and sat and watched them jump out of an old 46 twin engine Hilo. I don't think they've even got them in the inventory anymore. They retired them all. And it looks like a Chinook, a CH-47. But saw them free fall, and that was it. And I thought, man, this is what I'm going to do. So they taught me to run, and before you know it, I was running all over Virginia Beach and working out. And then I started swimming down at the Bay Bridge Tunnel and in Lake Joyce in the summer when the water got warm. And I got fins and a mask like they taught me. And I was running down the beach from like Chicks down to the Lesnar Bridge at Lynn Haven and back. Yeah, there's an old 46. Good old, that was a hell of a helicopter right there. But that's what did it. It inspired me. And, you know, to be honest, a lot of people out there, as time went by and I saw myself becoming stronger, you know, just from the time I was like 15 to 18, you know, I couldn't believe I was running 5-6 miles, working out, swimming like I did. And, you know, I thought, man, I can do this. And so I went to boot camp in July of 76 and met the SEAL motivator at the pool there at Great Lakes and took the screening test and passed it. And that was a point, that was a turning point in my life. And that's how it went, Reader's Digest version. So I think that's a pretty good story.
Oh, that's a great story. That's an incredible story. What I'd like to do right now, though, is, like I said, you sent me 2 videos and you sent me a bunch of stills.
Right.
I'd like to play a video. This one goes through maybe 2 minutes at the most, 1.5 minutes. And it's a video that you had assembled essentially about your life. But what I want to do when I play it, though, is I want to stop in some places and have you explain to people, okay, what are these photographs? What does this mean?
Right.
What does it mean to you? What does it mean to the United States? Who are these people? That kind of thing. So if I can figure out how to do this, I'm going to have to add it to the stage, then stop it, and then say, Dan created this, Dan sent it to me, and I'm going to let it play. And then I will stop at certain points and ask you, hey, can you describe what this was? Because a lot of this stuff is foreign to some folks. And
right.
What is it? What does it mean? Let's start. Okay, right there. How old were you, sir?
I was 21. Yeah, that was 47 years ago. But that was my first, you can see on my right shoulder there, I've got the old Underwater Demolition Team 12 patch on my greens there, camis. We were pulling into Guam on that first SEAL deployment that I did, and it was an amphibious ready group. And a friend of mine took that picture, and you know, it's just, when I look at it, I go, wow. And yeah, that's Guam, that Apra Harbor where we're pulling in, and you can even see the water back there. It's a little bit discolored from where the tugs and everything were pushing the ship up, you know, and the screws were going to get it up against the pier. Right. Yeah, that's one of my favorite pictures of me. Not only that, it shows you how Bruce Lee skinny I used to be.
Oh, yeah. But how cool to have photos like that available that you kept. I think that's way cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, this says May 1977.
Yep.
BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition and SEAL Training. Now, for people who don't know, some people have seen, maybe they've heard something about BUDS in the Navy, and maybe it's been associated with SEALs. Can you explain what BUDS is?
Yeah, it's the, what I call it, the flogging that guys go through. It's the basic training to get, you know, where they really push you to the limit and test you. And it's the basic training of all the basic skills necessary to be a SEAL, but it's also the physical, mental demands, you know, the running, the swimming, the cold water, the long hours, and then Hell Week, where you don't sleep for 5-6 days. And, you know, it's from Sunday to Friday, Saturday now. But yeah, it's a grueling 6-7 month training program that everybody has to go through to be a SEAL. And it's kind of like SEAL boot camp in to a degree, making it simple and in layman's terms. And that's my class right there. And you see me on the far left there, kneeling down in the first row. And then the man with his hand on the helmet with the white stripe, that was our class officer, Lieutenant J.G. Rexhand, great guy. But that was my buds class. And the significance of that picture is that that's the tarmac out at the Naval Outlying Landing Field that's out on San Clemente Island off the coast of Southern California. And we had just finished our 2-3 weeks out there at the end of third phase, which meant when that picture was taken, we had about a week and a half or so till we graduated. So you can see training right there was kind of over it. And we're all smiling because we're all thinking, we freaking made it. And the 31 guys, well, there's 33 in that picture, I think. And in the back there, next to the last row on the far right, and then 2 guys in on the right, those were actually 2 Greek officers that they sent over on a NATO exchange program for us. And they went through training with us so they could learn our stuff and take it back and, train the trainer over there in Greece. Their names were Xenos and Glenos. But yeah, that's me on the front row, far left, kneeling there. And believe me, after 7 months of going through that stuff, like anybody in the military, I don't even care if, you're in a law enforcement post academy or highway patrol, whatever, when it's over, you're kind of elated. You're kind of like thinking, I made it. So that's the significance. And we're getting ready to go home there from the island. And we're waiting for the plane to come in and fly us back to North Island, put our pallets and stuff on the bird, and then go back and graduate and get on with our career. So that's a pretty neat picture. And you can see the red helmets. That was the color that they used for third phase, land warfare and demolition and tactics. First phase was green, which was Hell Week and a lot of basic classes and, communications and stuff, and a lot of running and swimming, getting in shape. And then blue helmets were for dive phase, where you go through 8 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever it is now, learning how to dive all the rigs. But you can see on the helmets, you got 92, and that was our buds class number. So that's the significance of that picture.
Okay. How many people started? Do you remember roughly how many people started?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, back in November of 76, we started with 157 people, and then 31 of us made it. And there's been actual buds classes where I think they had one class where everybody quit years ago, decades ago.
Holy shit.
Everybody quit and no one graduated. And then, I know of classes where they started with 100 plus guys and maybe just 6, 7, or 8 made it, enough to, field a boat crew. Because like when you go through Hell Week now, you still have the IBS stuff where you learn teamwork and conditioning by doing surf passage. And Hell Week, you got to carry that thing on your head with 6 other guys in a 7-man boat crew for 6 days, 5 days, 24/7 with no sleep everywhere you go. It's like I'm at a point in my life, I'm 68 now, and when I look back on that, I do say to myself, how in the hell did I do that?
Well, now, are these all the people that graduated buds, or were there some more people that didn't make it?
No, that's all the people that graduated in our particular class. And when in buds history, if you will, the buds classes are numerically, ordered, successively. So, I think they're doing 5 classes a year now. So like back then, there's class 92, then they form up class 93, and they start about a month or 2 after you. And then class 94. So each class is different, but they had a successive number. And I actually believe, that I think they're actually close to 392 right now. 300 classes later, 5 a year, so you can do the math. We had our 40-year reunion. Not all those guys came back in 17 in Coronado, and we put it together. And I think about maybe a half of us showed up for it. And some of those guys in that picture aren't with us anymore. But yeah, it was fun. And, looking at that picture, it just brings back memories of everything you did together as a team, and the stuff that you went through, like a band of brothers type, mentality thing. And it gives you a good warm and fuzzy looking at it and brings back good memories. You know what I mean?
Oh, hell yeah. Let's continue. Okay, so class 92. This is the graduation, right?
Yeah, that's the day we graduated.
Is that the reunion or the graduation?
No, that's our graduation on June 9th of 77. And that's, we're getting ready to have the ceremony. So they took a class picture. They do that ceremonially for all Bud's classes. And they've got albums with each class in it. But that was our class the day we graduated. And then in the middle row, or in the front row in the middle, that's me kneeling down and everybody, because we graduated in June, so we wore our dress whites, but that's our graduation class. And that Phil H. Bucklew, that's what it was called, Naval Special Warfare Training Center building behind us, where you see it says Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training.
Right.
That's been raised now. It was raised a few years ago. They tore it down and they built a new one because it was getting so old and outdated. But yeah, that's our class picture that we took in our dress whites the day we graduated. I was only an E3 there. I hadn't even made third class yet. I wasn't even a petty officer yet. But yeah, that's a good picture. It brings back memories.
And this is 1978, also training Buds?
No, this is actually after Buds, and this was my first
UDT.
Special Warfare team. So after Buds, you go to either a SEAL team or back then a UDT team. Like I said before, they just decommissioned them. And I asked to go to UDT 12 because a lot of the guys I knew there from that deployment that I told you about, I met them in the fleet. And that's UDT 12. We just finished doing a run there. And the skipper said, let's take a command picture. And that's the skipper in the middle with Admiral Ray Smith. He was a lieutenant commander then. Captain Winter and Ray Smith, they were the CO and the XO. And then in the back row, right in the middle again, right under the R on underwater, that's me right under the R. But that was a great picture we took because it shows you the shape that everybody was in.
Oh, yeah.
From running and swimming and PTing and doing what you do as a frogman. So, yeah, that was my first, like I said, it was UDT back then. And then UDT 12 and 11, when they were decommissioned in the early 80s, UDT 12 became SEAL Team 3 and UDT 11 became SEAL Team 5. So they decommissioned the UDT teams. I think it was in 82, 83, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly, because they just felt that the whole thing for our primary mission in UDT had become obsolete in this day and age. So matter of fact, I think there's 10 SEAL teams now, 5 on each coast. That's how much they've grown over the past 30, 40 years or whatever. Yeah, that's a command picture after we just finished running at Balboa Park and we came back on the bus and then we all got together. So yeah, that's a good picture.
Let me go back here. Any comment about this photo?
Yeah, that's my first platoon at UDT 12. And we deployed in 78, 79. And that's me third from the left in the front row with my hands crossed.
Okay.
And that was one hell of a group of people. I mean, on the far left is Master Chief Herschel Davis. He was a Vietnam veteran, one of the most phenomenal people I ever met. And then standing next to him in the camis on the far left there is Dean Cummings. He retired as a Master Chief, and he was my command Master Chief actually at SEAL Team 3 when I retired back in 99. And we've been good friends. And then next to me on the right, the guy with the beard is Warrant Officer Daryl Chambly. He lives near Kansas City now. We're still good friends. We've kept in touch over the years, but that was my first platoon before we deployed. That was behind the old UDT 12 area.
And same guys?
Yeah, well, this is just the half of the platoon because it was a pretty big platoon because we were a lead line amphibious ready group bunch. So this is actually our squad, and that's Kwajalein Atoll. And we were doing stuff for the Army there, a hydrographic reconnaissance of some beaches that they wanted a chart for. But you can see Bones Bartlett there with the M14. We put him on Shark Watch because he was one of our best shots.
Shark Watch.
We did because there's freaking sharks out there in the South Pacific. They could get pesky and aggressive, but that's our squad. And we were you could see we're sitting on an IBS inflatable boat, small. And I'll tell you, that was a hell of a group of guys right there. I mean, that's me in the back middle with my face shadowed next to Big Jim Barron. Jim was a good friend of mine. Well, they all were, but Jim retired as Mass Chief too. And that's, Dean and Glay and all the guys. That's us getting ready to do a recon, hydrographic reconnaissance out on Kwajalein. Yep.
And who are these? Who's this lot?
This was jump school, and they sent us to Lakehurst, New Jersey for jump school because Fort Benning was full. And when they told us we were going to Lakehurst, we were like, what? So we went to jump school and did our first static line jumps to get our lead wings at Lakehurst. And that was our second jump out of that old C-17. We did our first jump the day before, sitting on our, I called them skid jumps over the out the side door of a UH-1 Huey, which was really cool, right over the skids. And so that's me on the left, and Mark Morris, big guy next over, Glenn Brenholt, and then Rocky Dumas. And then the guy standing up on the right, Dave Luttrell, he was my actual swim buddy. He was my swim buddy in BUDS. Because when you dive and swim in BUDS or as a SEAL, you always have another person with you. So, one of the two things you want to test somebody's validity or authenticity when they say they're a SEAL, ask them what class they were in and who was your swim buddy. If they can't answer that, being blunt about it, they're full of shit. You know what I mean?
Hey, I'm curious, with a name like Luttrell, did that guy, to your knowledge, have any links to Marcus Luttrell from Texas?
No, not that I know of. No, Marcus was like 30-something years later, I think. But Dave got out and he moved to Hawaii and he became a commercial diver. I think he worked for the University of Hawaii, and he worked on a fish farm for a while, those open ocean fish farms with the big cages and nets. And then I think he started doing oceanographic type research with the University of Hawaii, if I remember correctly, because it's been years. But yeah, that's just a couple of us at jump school, which was fun because I couldn't believe how excited I was when I made my first jump. It's like I couldn't wait to get out the door.
The only thing I remember that place about is that's where the Hindenburg went down, folks, if you recall.
Yeah, and that's a good story.
That spot.
Yeah, because the day before, we had a Marine named Rudd, Master Sergeant Rudd. He was our jump instructor, jump master. And we were on jump run in the Huey, and he'd already thrown out the streamers. And, we'd hooked up on that cable on the deck that you do it on the deck of a UH-1. And I looked down and saw this big iron cross painted on the grinder as we were approaching. And I was looking out in the field and I saw the T, that you aim for. And I was like, what the hell is that iron? And I wasn't even thinking because I was so excited. And Rudd was standing behind me and he goes, you're going to go first. I said, hell yeah. So he was checking me and make sure I had my pin and my static line, all that good stuff. And I was yelling at him. And I said, what the hell's the iron cross for? He goes, don't you remember? I said, no. He goes, I wasn't even thinking. He goes, that's where the Hindenburg crashed and burned. I thought that gave me a warm and fuzzy for my first static line jump as a SEAL.
And again.
Yeah, that's just a picture of us doing helocast and recovery. And instead of using the ramp there, we're going up through what they called the hell hole. There was a hatch there in the middle of the 46, where sometimes we, insert and extract or, recover the ladder up that way when we came back. And you can see, I'm not sure who that is, but it's a great picture that Mark, the guy I showed you in the picture earlier, or in the previous picture at jump school, he was an avid photographer. So he took a lot of pictures of us doing stuff over the years, but that's helo cast and recovery. And you can see that the guy in the water were at 25-yard intervals. His job was to hold and put his weight on the ladder so it wouldn't flop around, so the guy could get up it. And then the next guy, as the helo moved, he'd have his arm up like in cast recovery mode, and he'd hook the ladder and put his weight on it. And then once his weight was on it to stabilize, dragging you through the water, then the next guy went up, and it was fun to watch. And new guys screwed that up. We used to give them a lot of shit for it. Helo cast and recovery, and that's being recovered out of the hellhole, as they called it. Yep.
Folks, we're not going to do any breaks. I just want to remind everybody of this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And it's 1 minute after 9 o'clock on the Pacific Coast. It is 1 minute after, 11 o'clock Central. And it is midnight 01 on the East Coast. And again, thank you for being here. I'm talking to Dan Toth, and we will get to Big Feet, I swear, but let's continue. Now, I had to ask you about this.
Yeah, that's me and Dave in an SDV. That was an old 6 boat, and that's me in the back seat behind him. We're diving an old Emerson rig there. It was a rebreather, pure O2, no bubbles, man, just little bubbles, but we were learning, getting rides in SDVs, learning all about it as an NDOC. So that's a swimmer delivery vehicle, which they're obsolete now too. I don't think they even have 6 boats anymore. And I went to SDVs for a couple years and saw the evolution of them, with the other boats that we used. And back then, before they had SDV teams, the SDV teams were out of the underwater demolition teams before they became their own separate SDV teams, which they've got stationed in a couple of places now, like at Little Creek and out at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. So yeah, that was one of my first SDV rides there. That was fun.
Continue. Submarine?
Yeah, that's submarines. That was, I think that picture is me when we were doing lockout off of Barking Sands in Hawaii. I think it was the Bluefin, but that was my first sub ops. And I like that picture too, because I was the first guy.
Go back to it. And there we go.
Yeah, it was open circuit. We were at 50 feet periscope depth. And doing that stuff for the first time as a new guy, you get super excited. And Mark took this picture, yeah, and I think that's me. I'm pretty sure that's me, but anyway, that's Barking Sands sub ops off Hawaii back in 1978, 79, whenever it was. Yeah.
Okay. Good. There you go. Yeah. Nice. Now, SEAL Team 3, when was this? It says 87, but was this just a team photo or a graduation photo? What was the nature of that?
Yeah, this was our annual team photo with the commanding officer, the XO, the command master chief there in the front, the front 4 guys. And then again, I always ended up in pictures in the back middle. So the next second to the last row in the top middle there, at there. But this is one of my favorite pictures because it was just a really, really good time in my career being at that particular command like I was back in those days. At that time, SEAL Team 3, next to the Dev Group guys in 6, I think, in my opinion, was one of the cream of the crop teams in the whole spec war community. I mean, with the leadership we had and everything, it was phenomenal, and the people we had. And if you look in that front row too, all the way to the far right, that's Master Chief Billy Hill. He's a member of BIG, and I served with him there at 3.
Okay.
That's Billy Hill, and he's a member of BIG now. And I also worked with him on special operations mission planning at N66 Warcom for those 8 or 9 years from 14 to 22 or whatever it was. He's living in Texas now with his wife. So that was one of my favorite pictures of a command photo, and that was at SEAL Team 3.
Charlie Platoon.
Yeah, I did 3 deployments with Charlie Platoon in a row and 3 different OICs, and that's us at our compound in Malaysia, and that waters the Straits of Malacca. Behind us, we were there in August of '88, July, August, and we were actually there to train the the Malaysian SEALs, excuse me, and the Singaporean SEALs. We worked with them too. It's like foreign internal defense, but we also ended up doing counter-piracy stuff with them there in the Straits of Malacca. We were there for a while, but that's another one of my favorite platoon pictures of the 9 platoons and deployments that I did. And mind you, too, there are a lot of people out there. My tenure in the teams with these guys was all pre-9/11. Some of them were still on active duty when 9/11 went down. 9/11 went down about, 15 months after I retired. I'd already moved to Colorado. So, things were a little bit different then. And that's why when I see the things that everybody's doing in the military and what they did in Afghanistan with the war on terror and the amount of real world stuff that they did, it's phenomenal. And anybody in this country, that's why we have a debt of gratitude to people nowadays, especially for the work that they've done, post 9/11, the sacrifices that they've made, because it's mind numbing and incredible. So, yep, that was my next to the last platoon. Yeah, that was my next to the last. That was my 8th. I did one more after that, and then I went to BUD/S as an instructor in '94. Yeah.
Now that's you kneeling?
No, that's Mike.
Okay.
Mike is the vice president and assistant director. Mike was only 19 there, and that's me standing up on the left.
Okay.
And the other guy, due to the nature of his work, I won't tell you his name, but he was a great guy. He was our 60 gunner. And we just snapped that picture one day when we were out in the Philippines doing stuff. We were actually training, and Mike found that old picture folded up, and it had turned burnished brown like that, like an old Wild West photo. I always liked it because to this very day, if you notice, Mike's got his trigger finger outside of the trigger guard. I've got mine on the trigger.
You here or somebody else?
No, that's me on the right. And then the guy next to me is a friend of mine. We were really good friends, Eric Skalski. We were doing a dog and pony show at SEAL Team 3 for President Clinton and the Secretary of Defense. That was years ago, but they were on the beach, and we came in with our gear and stood up out of the ocean and sat there and showed them what we could do, sneaking into places at night, which a lot of people know it's called Over the Beach. But that picture's made it around a lot, and I always liked it. I mean, I'm not trying to be egotistical too much here, but it was a good memoir of me doing something like that was recorded, back in the day. And that picture was, I think that was like 80, that's been like 35, 40 years ago already, or 30 years ago. Yeah, it's 90 something. Anyway, yeah, that's me.
That's you?
Yeah, that's me. That's a Draeger LAR-5. And if you look back there to the right, you see that arm coming down and grabbing me, and I was making that face. Guy was taking pictures of us. Then the guy up to the right behind me is a friend of mine. But that big gray piece that you see there to the right, that's actually the side and the edge and the top of the screw of an aircraft carrier. We were under the aircraft carrier, and that's one of its screws that we're on.
Holy crap. But see, stuff like that you're never going to forget. And that's also why you love to have photographs like this.
Yeah, and
you should be appreciated. And thank you again for letting me show folks these things. But wait, there's more. Anna, that's what you were talking about right there.
Yeah, that's my retirement plaque from December 22. at the Warcom N66 job I had at Sompi on Special Operations Mission Planning. They gave me that when I retired, and see the Warcom insignia logo on there. But they put the Bigfoot on it, right under Freddie Frog, because they knew I was an old original UDTer. But everybody asked me, what are you going to do when you retire? I said, I'm going to go look for Bigfoot. So they put that on my plaque, which is pretty
Perfect.
cool. Yeah.
And then you went on to the Bigfoot Investigative Group. So thank you for letting me share this
sure.
to everybody. I appreciate it. I'm curious, though, out of BUDS and the training that you received, what do you think were some of the most important things that you learned? And I'm going somewhere with this.
Oh, yeah. What, going through BUDS?
No, I'm going somewhere with asking that question in terms of what are some of the most significant things that you learned out of all of that, out of all of your training?
Well, at this point in my life, being retired, not being in the teams anymore since '99, it was teamwork. Like most people in the military, you really learn how diverse and unique and different people are across the board, especially in the military. Because, I mean, you look at movies like Top Gun and, even Under Siege with Steven Seagal when they were on the mess decks. I always love that scene in Under Siege where they're playing the boombox on the mess deck, and there's the one African-American guy they called Cue Ball, and they're going, they're dancing, egging him on, dancing, going, go Cue Ball, go Cue Ball, go. That's what it is. I learned, to get along, work together as a team. People are different, and they're different in their uniqueness, and especially doing that kind of work going down range, you were like, hey, I want to make sure somebody's got my 6, if the shit hits the fan, being blunt about it. So yeah, I'd say it was teamwork and, being with people that, were at a very high-end, trained, motivated, and professional level, I guess I could call it. But yeah, that was what I'd say most of all was teamwork, and also to appreciate the amount of camaraderie and esprit de corps that everybody in the military has access to, and how unique it is, which a lot of people, not meaning to say it derogatorily, but a lot of people on the outside, I call it, just don't get it. And, once I retired in '99 and I went on my way doing what I did, it's kind of like you're not around that anymore in a big sense. So when you look back on it, I'd say it was teamwork. That's what I learned.
So, okay, couple of questions here next. What made you want to start the Bigfoot Investigative Group? When did you start it? Because now we're going to get into the meat of the matter. Number one, I appreciate the time that you took, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't ask any questions with regard to any amount of specificity with regard to the SEALs or anything like that. Those are things that throw it away. Thank you for explaining a lot of things to us. But now, the reason I think it's important, and this was where I was going, is that you made a life learning a whole bunch of very specific and critical skills in a whole bunch of different domains. And then you were able to transfer them over to creating this. Let me see what's up here. The Bigfoot Investigative Group. And by the way, just in case you're interested, you can go to BigfootInvestigativegroup.com, BigfootInvestigativegroup.com, and that's where you will find that website. So then you decided you wanted to do that. What made you decide that, okay, this is what I want to do now? All of this stuff has led me to this point. Now I'm going to do this.
Right. Well, when I was a kid growing up in Virginia Beach, this is a funny story. There's an overpass that goes across Shore Drive from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. at Greenwell Road, which goes down to Chicks Beach. And we used to sneak up there at night in the summer and the winter and sit on the overpass in the bushes and the trees because there was a drive-in movie theater that sat there. And we saw The Legend of Boggy Creek one night, sitting there in the bushes as a bunch of young teenage kids. And then it wasn't too much longer where I saw the Bigfoot special on In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And, just the way I'm wired, I guess I was motivated. And I've heard a lot of people say that, in their books and talks where they said that Legend of Boggy Creek, the Patterson Gimlin film, the special on In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And that was the catalyst that got me going because, like I said, I was in the boondocks down in Blackwater, the Dismal Swamp, everywhere all the time as a kid. I mean, I'd go out in my canoe, spend a day or two with my dog and my shotgun, come back to our campground. It didn't bother me one bit, but that's what got me going was that. And then I actually said to myself years ago, which I have witnesses to, I said, when I retire, when I'm 60 something, I'm hoping I still got a lot in my tank and I'm going to look for Bigfoot on my own. And, I admit that a lot of the stuff that I've learned and stuff as a SEAL, I am applying, to this, effort and this modus operandi and enigma that I'm pursuing here, like a lot of other people. But another good thing is like you, with your career, I think I went to 23 or 24 different highly advanced training courses during my career. And, a lot of them like sniper, I went to EOD school and, advanced communications school, naval gunfire support, but we had a field medicine. I think they used to call that. I didn't go to 18 Delta. No, I didn't go to that. But, just all this stuff you do. And I thought, when I retire and I'm in my 60s, I want to do something that's going to keep me active and excited. And I'm going to apply the stuff that I've learned to it. And so here I am. And I made that decision when I was like 14, 15 years old.
Wow.
And I mean, I got people that remember me saying it, friends, family, I got people remember me when I was a kid saying, I'm going to be a SEAL when I grow up. And people would look at me and go, you're out of your freaking mind, but that's where it came from. I got motivated from those movies and shows and it intrigued me. And so here I am following through with my lifelong plan. So I founded BIG in January of 23 after I moved back. Well, I founded it and then I moved back to Colorado from California in May of 23. So I've been back a little over 2 years now and started BIG in January of 22 or 23, excuse me. And then I recruited, a bunch of guys that I served with in the teams, and most of them were ex-law enforcement too. And then also a friend of mine that I worked with on staff at Sompi in Coronado those 8-9 years. He's a retired Marine. He came on board, and you can look at the staff page on the website and see everybody that's on there and take a look at it. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, it's me, Mike's the assistant vice president. Scott just retired. We served at Team 3 together. He just retired as sheriff's deputy. Mass Chief Hill, I worked with him in the teams and at Sompi. He did 2 tours in Nam. And then Pat, he was a Marine, 20 years. Then Rick is a friend of mine. He's a mountain guy, big time mountain guy here in Colorado. I met him back in 99 when I moved here. I started a elite fitness company for 7 years called SEAL Rocky Mountain Fitness here in the Denver area from 99 to 06. And that's where we met. And then I just met Mr. Steve Brown about a year ago. He's an Army veteran. He lives out in Ramona, California. So he's our eyes and ears out there. He wrote me, we connected. And he's also got a mind-numbing story that he had an incident at Fort Bliss when he was in the Army, a Bigfoot encounter in 1991, and it's on the website. You can read it.
Okay, so you guys have this. See, I find this very unusual, but really cool at the same time. You are a very cohesive. This group is relatively new, 23.
Yeah.
You've got guys of a like background, of similar natures, interested in the military, interested in law enforcement, hooked up with all of that stuff, and they have a common interest in Bigfoot.
Right.
And that to me is absolutely wonderful, that you can find an avocation where all those people with similar backgrounds got together with another similar interest. That's just very, very cool.
Well, the thing is, we've known all those guys on there, with the exception of Steve. We've known each other for like 35. Like me and Mike met in 87. So me and Mike have known each other 38 years. We deployed together. He was in that picture in Malaysia. I forgot to point him out. Sorry. But, and I know Master Chief Hill for 35, almost 40 years. And then Pat I worked with. So, and I was pretty surprised on that note too, because when I retired, I had a big retirement party in December of 22, and it went really well, and they were at it. And I sat them down and I said, hey, guess what I'm going to do? Made up my mind. I'm going to start looking for Bigfoot and form an organization. And I actually drew the logo because I've got a background in drafting and engineering, technical illustration, and art too. But I designed that logo and I just got it trademarked about 3 weeks ago. It's officially trademarked now. But I called them up one night right around Christmas of 22, about 3 weeks after the party. And I said, hey, I'm going to do it. And I was amazed because they all said, count me in. So, there you go. So, it's growing, and we've accomplished a lot, which we're going to see here soon in 2 years. And before we go on to the next phase, anybody and everybody that's watching, I want to tell you on a high-end professional note that it's been a lot of work and we're just starting. But we do this research in a SEAL mode, based on stuff the way we do it. And it's a lot of painstaking, patient, long nights, and it's paid off. And also, I'm going to say it candidly, that probably 75, 80% of our modus of operandi we employed actually on from the advice of Dr. Meldrum, because I spend time with him. Matter of fact, I'm going back up to his laboratory next month for a couple days in Pocatello at Idaho State. But the things that he's taught me, that he knows, we've applied. One of them is to be non-reactionary. And I'm not bad-mouthing other Bigfoot researchers, but based on his theories for habitat and what we would call most probable areas that they would be found in or living in, due to food supply, water, and also their correlation with black bears, because black bears and Bigfoot pretty much have the same diet, if you will. So all these things based on a couple of formulas and maps that Dr. Meldrum gave me that were suspected or most highly probable areas where Bigfoot would be based on black bear population too. We picked 2 of them a couple years ago after a couple months of research. And then we talked to Sheriff's Deputy, Undersheriff down in Taos, New Mexico, Jerry Hogriff, and other people. We got their stories and their insights and put all this stuff together. I don't have time to go into it, but I said, we're going to work here and we're going to work here. And we're going to stay in these 2 areas and we're going to work it. So we've been like up at Hans Peak, Columbine, Summit Creek, Colorado, which is north of Steamboat Springs. Been working up there a year now. I just got back Tuesday night from 5 days of being out there and had some phenomenal stuff go on there and in Bobcat Pass, Cuesta, New Mexico. And I'm going to tell everybody candidly and bluntly and honestly and professionally, as a retired SEAL, straight across the board, I've seen them down in New Mexico and Colorado. I've got pictures where they were within 45, 50 feet from me. I caught them peeking at me over tree limbs, moving, tree knocking, one screamed at me one night while I was out in a herd of elk. I just walked. That's the way I am. I walk out the animals. I just walked out in a herd of elk with my camera going. Heard these 3 hellacious night screams. It was about 1:30 in the morning in October of 23 in Bobcat Pass, New Mexico, which is just east of Red River. And man, if you could have heard this thing scream 3 times, and in the video we're going to watch, you'll see me move. I'll narrate it when we go through it, but they're real. Don't let anybody tell you that they're not. And I've come to the conclusion after being near them that they are curious. They're not dangerous unless you piss them off, or you get near their young, or you do something stupid, just being blunt about it. And they're very smart, and they're very elusive. And I can't believe how quiet they can be if they want. And not only that, I've been amazed because I was a sniper and I know what it takes. Anybody else out there that's been a damn military sniper, you know what it's like to sit still in a ghillie suit for a while, you know, when you're getting close to your target, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, that's my take on it. And when you see the evidence coming up, I'm sure you'll become a believer, or, you know, you'll be edified and enthralled if you're already a believer.
Let me do this, Dan. I'd like to ask your permission to throw the phone lines open. If anybody would like to call, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. The phone number is down below. If you'd like to ask Dan Toth a question and or make a comment, something like that, I just want to remind everybody that we're talking to Dan Toth tonight in the Saloon. He is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL from SEAL Team 3. Basically a dude that embodies kind of the best that America has to offer, a creator of B.I.G, the Bigfoot Investigative Group, whose motto is, and damn me for not mentioning this yet,
right.
The motto is to prove that they are.
Yeah,
so,
I like that.
Folks, the phone lines are open. If you want to call 916-835-3329, 916-835-3329. And I want to no more promos or any of that kind of stuff. I just want to remind everybody where we are right now.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
So anyway, Dan, it is great, fabulous to have you here. How about if we go, you sent me some photos.
Right.
And would that be okay if I put them up? Would you prefer to watch the video, or prefer to see the photos and then explain the photos?
Yeah, we'll watch if you can do the Bobcat Pass one, because the phenomenon on that, and I didn't even realize this until recently, like a month or 2 ago, but the night that incident happened in October 23 down in Bobcat Pass, New Mexico, was October 20th. I didn't even realize that, but I made a sketch because I dated it of what I perceived was looking at me in that video. And that's the same day that Patterson and Gimlin filmed Patty at Willow Creek back in '67. And I'm not
interesting.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't even pay attention to it till I looked at my sketch that I had in my book. And then I started looking at some of the old video film clips on, the web of Patty. And then I thought, oh, that's the same date. 56 years later? So yeah, I took that video at Bobcat Pass on October 20th, 23. So, and it's 1:30 in the morning. So I guess if you run it, I can narrate through it, right? Because there's no audio.
Okay, let me put this up and stop. Tell you what, I'm going to make this big so that it takes the whole screen. See what I did there? Yeah. And so let's play this. And when you want me to stop, just let me know that you'd like to make some kind of a comment. Here we go. Hey, it's my logo. Thanks.
Well, this is the highlight one. Yeah, that's the highlight one.
Okay.
So yeah, that's not the Bobcat Pass. That's me and Mike on our first outing. You stop that right there.
Okay, go ahead.
Go back to that. Yeah, that's one of the first footprints at the guard shack at the Chevron mine. That one of my witnesses and good friend of mine and his girlfriend Sylvia, she's a sheriff's deputy, Taos, New Mexico. He gave me that when the creature ran across the parking lot one night. And I didn't measure it, because if you look at the top in the middle, you'll see the pop top up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that for scale. So the thing about that print is that was in July, like 3 or 4 years ago, when Eric found that in the morning. And it's about 17, 18 inches long, I think. And you can see that its foot's deformed. It's got split toes. Looks like it's been broken or cut or somehow. And you see how the big toe up there extenuates and makes that square topping up there to the right?
Right.
Okay, well, that's imperative to put that in your memory tank and mind as we move on. But Eric gave me that, and he was the first witness. As a matter of fact, Under Sheriff Jerry Hogriff used to be the sheriff of Taos County. He was the one that, I contacted him through some leads, and we talked extensively about the Bigfoot activity. And that's why I picked this area, because after talking to him and Eric and his girlfriend, because she had a couple sightings while she was on duty as a sheriff's deputy. But anyway, remember that footprint and what it looks like. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay.
That's Yogi.
That's your bear friend.
That's Yogi. He's just sitting there. It's a great picture. He's just sitting there looking at it. And Eric took that while he was on duty. And it's amazing because, I'm going to tell people right now, we'll see some pictures in a little while, but doing what I do as a SEAL, going out there and just sitting in the dark, I've had every freaking thing you can dream of, including a moose, just walk up on me and stand there and look at me. And I'm like, 3 weeks ago, I had a moose walk by me in the dark out by Hans Peak Lake up there out here in Colorado. He was about 20 feet from me when he passed me. Then he walked by me, turned around, came back and bedded down in front of me about 40 yards away, 30 yards away. And he just sat there bedded down, staring at me, chewing his cud in the dark.
See, that's
pretty funny.
That's just amazing about what you've done.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, if you've ever been near a bull moose that big with his rack, he came up over this road and I was down the embankment in the meadow. My car was parked on the other side and I'd seen something up this gully on my thermal imager and I was going to check it out. And all of a sudden there he was, he's walking by me in the dark. I was like, holy shit. I didn't move or do nothing, but he did. He walked by me, turned around and looked at me, took about 20 steps back toward me, and then he just bedded down about 35, 40 yards from me in the dark. And that was it. He was just sitting there staring at me in the dark. Okay, you can go ahead. There's a good elk track.
What kind of a print is that?
That's an elk. And this is a mud puddle I found last August, a year ago, with all these tracks around it. So I went out there and sat in the dark. And I was out there one night with a friend of mine in her truck. And it was about 12:30. About 12:30. And the amount of animals that were drinking out of this mud puddle that time of the year in August was amazing. But we found a tree break there, and I went across the road to check it out. And while I was on the other side of the road, my friend was in the truck with just the engine turned off, sitting there. I said, just wait for me here, because I'd go in the woods and come back out, and then we'd move to another spot, just being quiet as I could. But came back up to the truck because we found a tree break there that was not there just like 20 minutes before, because I patrol this like 300-yard stretch of road, just idling very quietly, looking for stuff. And it was amazing. We had a tree knock right when I got up to the truck off the embankment from down at the creek. And it was super loud. And you could tell it was not a human being. There's not a freaking person on this planet I know from my experience that could hit a tree as hard as what we heard this thing, do that tree knock that night in August last year. But then she heard it moving. And she's been a guide up there for like 25 years, doing horseback hiking, snowmobile stuff. And, I think she was even under the impression I've never heard anything like that. But then we heard it tree knock again 2 or 3 times later. And I just got in the truck and I said, just go slow down the road. Let's come back in about a minute, see if we get lucky. And if we can see it step out, get it in the headlights. But when we got back to the same spot, which was less than a couple minutes later, we heard a tree knock in the distance. And I couldn't tell, from the report of the tree knock, in just a couple minutes, like 3 or 4 minutes, we went down the road and came back. I couldn't believe how far away that thing was already. And that's another thing. I sat there and thought to myself, there's no way a freaking human being can move through this thick stuff like that quick and that far away. Because it's like, you can hear the report of weapons in the distance, guys that have been there and know that. It's like, wow. So yeah, that's Boulder Creek outside of Lyons, Colorado. We'll move on, try to get going here so I don't get too elaborate and verbose, as Dr. Meldrum says. Mountain lion.
Did you take that photo?
No, a friend of mine did.
Damn.
That's right behind my friend's house where I stay when I go out there. And I guess the neighbor's dogs had it treed, but that's a beautiful mountain lion right there. Look at the length of its tail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't take that one, but that's right where I stay.
That's beautiful.
There you go.
Now,
this is my favorite. This was taken in the snow back in April up by Summit Creek, Columbine, Colorado. And this is, the effects of sublimination. But you can see the size of the tracks where it went up off the road and up around that knoll, and you can see the size of the feet. I took that in the dark, and sometimes when I admit, I get a little adrenaline going when I'm out there in the dark because I get out of my car and I am armed, but I'm still careful. But you can see those are legitimate tracks going up around that little, and you see that's a little knoll. There's a creek and a little gully on the other side. And you can tell that's not a person, that's not someone in snowshoes. Those are real tracks that were left. And you can see that its step and its stride's a little shorter because it's going up and around the hill at that knoll. So I took that in April out there, and that was about 1 a.m. when I found those. And you can see it's the side of the road. So you can go on.
But see, I think that is a perfect example of what Dr. Meldrum said. It's a prototypical track. These creatures walk in a linear fashion, not alternating footsteps, like 2 rows, but a singular row. And I think that is a perfect example of just that, of what he said in his presentation.
There you go. That was last November, and you can see the deer elk track there. Then you can see the tracks coming down to the creek, and I think that might be a juvenile, but I'm pretty much sure that particular incident. And you can see the stride and everything. Yeah, tightrope walker is right, but you can see it's not like any other animal side by side. It's linear. And also, I think he went down there to get a drink. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I can go to the next one. So we can. Okay, this is a good one. This is, if you remember the footprint that Eric took at the guard shack at the Chevron mine.
Okay.
This is 3 years later in the snow last, March, from when I was down there, March a year ago. And I found this set of tracks, and you can see that left foot is an exact match to the track in the mud from up at the guard shack July 3 years before that. It's the same footprint, same size. You can see the deformed foot and the toe,
the same injury that you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Or deformity, but it's the exact same footprint 3 years later between the summer and the winter. And Dr. Meldrum's had a couple cases like that that are confirmed in like Washington and Oregon and other places in the Pacific Northwest where they found tracks that were from the same creature, like 8-10 years apart, maybe 100 and 150 miles, whatever it was. I don't remember exactly, but they, it's like fingerprints fingerprints, footprints. That's the same daggone creature. Which when I found him, I got out of the car and I walked over there. When I saw him from the road, I was like, holy crap, that's the same footprint from the same track from 3 years ago up at the Chevron mine guard shack. So yeah, we can go. Pretty neat, huh? This was Clark back in April or March, April. You can see the footprints. Again, they're in line coming across the guy's property. And you can see the elk tracks next to him. See the difference in the elk tracks next to the Sasquatch prints in the snow on the left. And then the thing crossed over and sat down. That's its butt cheeks and its thigh where it sat in the snow for some reason right there. See that crack and that's its thigh. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's what that is. And you see the tracks behind it. See how big they are next to the elk and how straight they are. So we found that just going out to Sand Mountain one night, because that's where I've had a lot of vocalizations at, sitting in the dark at Sand Mountain out there. So we can go to the next one. Here you go.
What's that?
This is where the incident at Bobcat Pass took place. And that's the meadow that you're going to see. I want everybody to look over there to the left, down that gully, down that rise. You see that little white shack there?
Yeah, a little building.
Yeah, you're going to see that in the video. And then when you see those power lines out there where the three support poles are, telephone poles, you see that little white open area there to the right where the grass hooks into those pine trees. At night on the thermal imager, that's where the Sasquatch was standing when I caught him. But I took that picture so people can see. And then I was out in the field and the elk were scattered in that area. But just remember that little white shack there, that little utility shed or whatever it is. All right, go ahead.
Now, same footprint, different footprint.
No, this is another one that Eric took, my witness, out by Bobcat Pass in the snow a couple years ago in the winter. But that's Eric's foot there. He sent me that. So that's Eric's. And then you can see how it all came together. And you can see that that is a right footprint. And you can see how deep it is from the weight of the creature. And you can tell that's not a snowshoe and it's sublimated a bit. But that was in the snow going across all the way out past the area called Black Mountain. But that's Eric's footprint there. He sent me that one.
So let me put us both back in here. There we go. And great video. There are also some stills that I want to put up here, and perhaps you can explain those as well.
Sure.
There's that one.
Yeah, that's the comparison between the two footprints, 3 years apart in the mud and the snow, and you can see where the deformed toes are. And you can see, if you look at that one third toe over from the deformity that's sticking up, you can see that it matches that other print. And if you look at that mud print closely in this picture, halfway down along the arch on the left side of the print, you actually see a bobcat print there in the Bigfoot print. That's a bobcat footprint. Paw print.
And then there's this one. Now, this is another version of what you had before, but this also emphasizes the linear nature of when you see this, because men don't walk like that in a straight line.
Right. And then another thing, even if it was somebody in snowshoes, they would be side by side and you would see their poles, the impact point. I call them the poke holes, from their poles, or they'd be side by side and they'd be, a lot more torn up because people that walk in snowshoes really throw around a lot of snow. And you can see how smooth and clean those prints are. And they've probably been there a while, but I mean, it's phenomenal. I found that because even when I got out of the car that night and walked over there, I admit my adrenaline was going a bit because I knew they'd been there a while, but I thought, you know, the only thing I worry about when I'm out there is the son of a gun throwing something at me because I've heard stories of them throwing stuff at people. So,
Oh yeah. Tree knocks, rocks.
Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, but if those are some of the pictures, and I got the thermal ones I took that are really good. And then this is one of my favorites. I took at Bobcat Pass a couple months after the October 20th, 23 one, in the same location, and I'm out in the field following the elk. I'm about maybe 35, 40, 50 yards behind them, if that. But I was following them because they didn't mind, and they'd go to this spot and bed down. They had a regular place where they bed down all the time for the night. And it was pretty cold that night. But as I was standing there filming him, he stood up, and that's him with the arrow. And you can see the little black square on his back where I got a little hit on the thermal imager. I got a signature from it. But that's his back. And the arrow's pointing at the top of his pointed skull. And when you look down to the right, you can see a little flare, and that's his arm. And then you can see he has no neck up on the left, just down to the left of the arrow. And then you're looking at his back and lats and a little bit of his deltoid, and maybe the back of his tricep and elbow going down the side of that signature on the left side. But that's a good one of him. And he was big because you can see how tall he is. He was about 50 yards from me when he stood up. And if you look at that little black gray area to the right of him, he was gone and in that in no time. And I was just barely had enough time to snap that picture of him. And that's what's happened a lot of times in my sightings with the old ATN thermal imaging camera I had. You had to hold down the button for like 5-6 seconds for it to kick into video mode. So when that would happen, I'd just snap pictures of it quick because I didn't have time to get the video going. So this next series is good. This happened last month out there. Can you enlarge those?
I wish I could, but I can't.
Okay, well, anyway. Well, the first set, if you look at it, the arrow is pointing at the top of the creature's pointed skull. And the gray area below it, that's him peeking out from behind the tree. And if you look at that series of pictures from the one on the left to the middle to the right, you can actually see where he turns a bit and looks the other way. And then he looks out at me again, and you can see how he's moving because he's tree peeking. That's a tree peek. And if you look at the background where I went in the woods on that one, that was a hairy one because I heard him and I smelt him. And I just parked my car and started walking in there, and there he was. And he's probably about 75, 80 feet from me there, if that. But he didn't bother me, and getting to the point where I feel really comfortable with him. Then I got a picture there where I don't highlight it. And if you look at that white background behind him, you can see it's the exact same spot over the top of his head. So, you can see the tree in the white. But if you look at his gray where he's peeking out, you can see his movement in that series of stills I took. And then I circled him on the bottom three where you can see where he's in the circle. And if you look at those circles closely, I know it's small, you can see where he moves a bit. And you can, if you look at the tree trunk on the right side of his skull there, where the tree trunk intersects his head, you can see a gap of white between the white and his head and the tree trunk where you can tell he's making movement, and he's moving a little bit. And I'll tell you another thing about these things. I can't believe how freaking still they can be. I mean, it's amazing how still they can be. So this next one was my first sighting of him. I went down a tree run out by Sand Mountain. This was about, I think was 1:32 in the morning. You can see that run. And I'm armed. I have 44 Magnum, bear spray, buck knife, chain, dog chain. I use that for a weapon too, just in case I need it, and a couple other things. But I'm not going to use a weapon on it because I know now I don't have to. But on the right there, That's the first time he peeked out. That's his upper torso. And then the one on the left, I caught him about a month later in the same area, but he came out and went up the hill and he was gone so fast, but that's his back. And then when you go down to the next one on the right, you can see he's peeking at me again in the same area, not the same exact, but it's the same exact profile and outline. And when you go to the website and blow that up and look at it under the files page on our website, if you look at those two pictures of the first couple of sightings that I made last August and September with him when he showed himself, and you go back and look at the Paul Freeman film that Paul Freeman did up in the Blue Mountains, Walla Walla, back in 97, and you look at the stills from the famous Paul Freeman's film when the Sasquatch was walking across the dirt road and the clearing in front of him, which is one of my favorites. And Paul says, "Oh, there he goes." He goes, "Oh, there he goes." But it's the same profile. That creature looks exactly the same profile as the Freeman film from 97. And then on the left, you can see where he turns around and walks away and goes up the hill. And then the next one down, this was the biggie. In August, the night we heard the tree knocks, came back to the spot like 3 weeks later, parked the truck and got out. And if you look at that circle with the arrows, you can see his face and pointed skull. He's looking at me over the top of the aspen limb. And the right arrow is pointing at the top of his skull. And you can see his face, his eyes, nose, mouth, and his beard. And that black hand that's up there on the aspen tree trunk to the left, that's his hand. He's got his arm up around the tree, and that's his hand, that black spot. And you can see where his left cheek and face overlap the trunk of the aspen tree on the right side as the trunk's going up. And then the next one over, you can see, if you look at it close enough there, you can see his face and his nose and his pointed skull, and he's taking a peek. And what he's doing there, he actually reached out and put his hand on the limb of the aspen tree, and like a geisha fan, he pulled it down to take a look at me, and then let it go back up. But I hope everybody sees his face and head there. And you look at that right side of the trunk of the aspen tree, right where it starts coming out of the aspen leaves there on the limb, and you can actually see his jaw overlapping with his cheek and his head going up, and you can see his pointed skull going back down. He's huge. And then this is another one that happened a couple months later. I don't know what the hell this was, but I heard it up in the trees, and I took pictures of it with my cell phone. And if you look, you can see a pointed skull, and you can see the left eye, and you can see, I don't know what it is. And I just took a picture of it. And when I caught it, I was like, I don't even know. Might be a bobcat or a ocelot or something like that. I don't know. Then the bottom one was taken last December, November, in the snow. The middle one, you can see how deep the heel goes into the snow. And it's not a bear because the bears are already hibernated. You can see the heel and the arch and the toes. And I got that out by Summit Creek in the middle of the night when he was going up the embankment and through a meadow. And that was a good one because I got out of the car and tracked him a ways and heard a few things, but I never saw him. So that's the pictures. Yeah, and that's on the website. Yeah, you can look at those on the website.
Well, I think I have a couple more photos or
gameplay.
We saw that one.
Yeah, here's a good one. This was from last September, October. Yeah, October. You can clearly see him there. And when I snapped the picture, that's the top of his skull. And if you look coming down the front of his face, you see that little quick sticking out. That's what's his trapezius muscle, and going over to his deltoid on his left side. You can see the huge trapezius muscle coming down to the right. That's him taking a peek at me. And on that one, when I snapped it, you can see the heat indicator on the ATN picked him up, and I snapped it right before it got on him. You know what I mean? Because I had it on, I think I had it on black hot or white hot. I don't remember. But anyway, that's a good one. And the arrow's pointing right at the top of his skull. You can see him looking at me there. He's big. That's why I got the name Big. So go to the next one.
I think that's all I have for the photos. You sent me.
Oh, that's it?
2, 3, 4, 5. Yes.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. Well, you want to show that Bobcat Pass video? I sent you that one, right?
I did not get that. I have the 2 and I didn't. Well, let me ask you this. Is it in your website?
Yeah, it's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go to the website on the pictures page and click on it. We can watch it if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, just go to picture, the drop down menu.
Okay. Which one would you like to play? There was one.
The very top one where it says sighting at Bobcat Pass, New Mexico.
Okay, here we go. Okay, let's play this.
Yeah, and this is the mother lode. You got to see this, everybody. You'll be amazed when you see this. This is at 1:30 in the morning. I'll narrate it as we go through it. Should have heard this thing scream. Okay, stop right there. This is the first scream. And you can see the elk are looking around. Now you can go ahead now. But this is when the first scream, and I'll tell you, there's no human that could make the noise I heard that night. And I kicked myself for not having any audio, but keep on going now. The first scream sounded like it came from the left, and you see the animals looking that way. Right. There's the little shack I told you about.
Yes. Back
there in the other picture. Then it screamed a second time, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So I came back, and that's a bear at the edge of the woods there, the pines. And then there's a big, I think that's another elk or a deer, but it screamed the third time, and then I knew it was right in front of me like a gunshot. And there he is. That, my friends, is a live Sasquatch. He's about an 8-9 footer.
That's pretty amazing.
You can see his pointed skull. He's just standing there still. He's looking at me. He didn't move. And I don't know why he screamed, but that's red hot thermal on an ATN. And you can see the pointed skull. And if you stop right there, you can see the red signature. But if you look at the left side of his skull coming down, you see that little white area that looks like a little hook.
Okay.
That's the top of the pine trees where he's standing behind on that hillside. And that white area is actually his upper torso and pecs and chest and deltoid trapezius area, filling up the gap between the tops of those two pine trees. That's how big he is. And when I went to that spot the next day, I measured him at about 8.5 to 9 feet at least. But you can see the profile and the signature of him compared to the elk and the other animals that you just looked at. So you can go ahead. You can see I'm getting a red signature, and you can see he's just standing there looking at me. And I quit filming because I filmed him for like about 6, 7, 8 minutes, and he didn't move. I thought, daggone. So I just quit filming him, and I went about my business. And then I came back a little bit later, and he was gone. So that's the Bobcat Pass video from October 2023.
Wouldn't you say that you're, well, let me do this. You think that you're going to get some take. Now, obviously you've got some FLIR / nighttime take, some video.
Right.
But your forte is the direct experience, whereas other people are trying to force an issue or perhaps force a sighting. You just find a location, sit, and wait.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. And I do that so everybody understands. It's not a random thing based on the stuff I learned from Dr. Meldrum and my own experience. As a SEAL, I did an area study. I picked out 2 or 3 areas in each study area in Colorado and New Mexico, which would be the most highly probable for, like, game enthusiasts and hunters when they put up their trail cameras, on trails and runs. And I just go and sit because I figured this has got to be a place where they'd probably come to the creek for water. There's good trafficability back here through these ravines and gullies because, even anybody that's done any humping in the military will tell you too, SF guys, sometimes especially when you're training, you want to take the path of least resistance to get to your target if you can do it without being stupid and being compromised or second guessed. But I've done stuff like that based on my experience, and it's panned out because, like I said before, if you remember, based on Dr. Meldrum's information and the teachings and the recommendations that he's conveyed to me the last 2 years or so, I've applied and adhered to a lot of that. And one of them is just sticking to 2 areas. These 2 spaces, these 2 places, work them, don't be reactionary. We're not moving around. And it's paying off because, I mean, if you went back to my website and went to the big files page again, I think I've got a picture, and you'll see some of the wildlife encounters that I had from just sitting there in the dark. Yeah, like they just said, I just go camp, set up camp and wait, and they come to me always, and they can be scary sometimes. Yeah, it can be scary. You got a 8-foot tall, 1,100-pound hominid coming to your campground. So that's why maybe if we get lucky, we'll invite him into the campground one night and have a root beer or a beer with him and roast some hot dogs. I don't know, just being off the wall. Yeah, that's what I do. It's been pretty methodical in picking out the places and just sticking to them and working that area and staying there. And it's turning out to be pretty fruitful and productive. Just let everybody know.
Any other videos that you'd like to play from, because I have your site still up and I have some of the videos still up. There's highlight video, there's thermal night sighting.
Yeah, we can do that. Do the thermal night sightings.
Okay, here
these are thermal images I took last year and a half. I didn't take that. That's the one you saw before. That's Bobcat Pass. Yeah, that's the one where he popped up at Bobcat Pass. You can see him there on the left. This is out by Allen's Park, Estes Park, Rocky Mountain National Park. I just walked out this herd of elk, deer one night, just stood there and took pictures of them. They all stood and looked at me. I went back to my car. It was pretty neat. That's some of my art. I do my own art, put my own ads together with my logo. That's a still of the Bobcat Pass. You can see the red signature. You can see him standing there, his pointed head. It's one of my favorites. There's a close-up. You can see that distinctive pointed skull.
Right.
Yeah. Then these are just renditions of, different versions of great art, I think, of what Sasquatch might look like. And there's one. This is a good one. This is near Bobcat Pass again, and that's on Fusion on my ATN or my thermal imager, and you can see him. There's one where he peeked out, and it's the same profile. You can see him there in the white. You can see his head. He peeked out, and I've got that on video. And I don't know how the hell he got on the moon, but there he is on the moon, eyeballing an astronaut.
He's damn good.
I made that for the fun of it. Couldn't resist it because I thought, yeah. And there's one that moved quick. You can see popped up, and I think that might be the female out there because I think there's a male and a female. Not sure. This is a good one. Popped up there and looked at me over the trees on the hillside. And that was right out by Long's Peak and Mount Meeker last January. So that's some of the highlight thermal images that I took in the past year. I think that's the end of it, isn't it? Oh, no, there's more. Yeah, there's more.
You got a few more.
This was the first one I took at Red River. We actually smelled him that night right between Cuesta and Red River. And he peeked up over the bank of the creek. And then this was in the winter last year. And you see that red square up there to the left, right there? That's the pump house light at the pump house, which was one of Eric's rounds working as a security officer at the Chevron mine. But if you go back to that, I was sitting in the woods there. Yeah, you go back. You can go back. Thanks. Where's the one I think it's forward. You passed it. That's the far one of the one that's zoomed out. You can see him standing there. That's a little bit clearer, looking through the woods. Then that one in the red, yeah. Where'd that one in the red go at the pump house? Yeah, there we go. Stop. Yeah, right there. There on the right, you can see him. He stood up, and it was amazing because what you're looking at there is his torso, and the trees are hiding his head and shoulders. And if you look down, you see that V, and that's actually his crotch, where his legs and thighs are at the bottom of that image. But that's him. And then he took off quick. He went up the side of that hill in the dark like nothing. He was gone. I heard him, but that's him right there. And I only got that portion of him because it happened so fast. But the square, the red square to the left there, that's actually the pump house down there between Columbine and Cuesta, which is part of the engineering stuff or whatever for the Chevron mine. I think they used that to pump water up to the mine. Anyway, that's a good one. Yeah, that's the one at the distance. That's out by Summit Creek. You can see him, see the black right there, yeah. That's a good one. And I go back to these spots too, so everybody knows to make sure I double check them, make sure it's not a tree or something that wasn't there the next night. So, and that's enough evidence right there. Pine trees don't walk out of the woods overnight. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's the first one I had. That's him peeking out on the run. That's, right there. Yep. And then you can see the other images of catching him over the next year. And that's one of the good ones at Bobcat Bass that I caught in black hot, a couple months after October. You can see him right there looking at me. I caught him just briefly, and then he took off. But you can see his head and shoulders, and he's kind of dipping his head down there. But he was big. You can see the power lines. Then there's the comparison. Like I said, if people want to go look at some of the Freeman film of the stills of the Freeman, and there's a closer shot of the August. You can see his face right there in the circle. It's pretty clear. And that's a pretty good picture because that happened so fast. I didn't even have my thermal imager on. I just pulled my cell phone out and I took those pictures in night mode on my phone and caught those. I was lucky. It's pretty fortuitous, but it's pretty amazing. And I went back and checked that spot. And that was a good one. Did you see that last one? That's a joke I made. There's Yogi Bear.
You're saying hello to his pal in the background.
Yeah, see him? Well, that's superimposed. I do CGI stuff like that for the fun of it sometime. But that place is up between Lyons and Estes Park, that campground. I always liked that Yogi Bear statue there at that campground. And I CGI'd that Bigfoot in there walking across the parking lot. So anyway, that's those. So that's some of the highlight black and whites I took. Our night thermal over the past year and a half. Pretty neat.
So I attended your conference last month, and you held one in 24, and then you held the one last month in 25.
Right.
When you gave your conferences, was there anything in particular that you were looking for? More people, awareness, promotion, or mostly to display what it was that you guys were looking for in the investigative group itself?
Yeah, the bottom line is that, like I say, in our ethos, or slogan, to prove that they are. And that's what I'm trying to do. But also I want to share it with people, because I know there's a lot of great people out there that are working hard, active in the, researching and investigating, doing field work, in the Bigfoot enigma. So my main goal is just to, share my findings with people in the public, just for the sake of, like I say, edification, enlightenment, education, and entertainment, and enthrall people. Not only that, to prove that they are, because my ultimate goal is to get up close and personal with one and document the interaction to some degree. I mean, even if it's at a distance, kind of like that closing scene of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when the alien comes out of the mothership and stands there on the tarmac at a distance from him and raises its arm. If I can get something like that, that's what I'm shooting for, and that's what I'm hoping for, to have some type of interaction with them at a nominal distance where, it's pretty clear on video, and then maybe down the line get lucky enough where they can get familiar and comfortable with me enough to where I can get closer to them and, get more proof and evidence. Because I know they can be very elusive. They're very stealthy, very quiet. But at the same time, they're really curious. And I think that they harbor and possess a pretty, heightened sense of intelligence. But big overall, I'm doing it because I just want to share what we find with the public, and other people that are interested, in the Bigfoot enigma, what I call, other Bigfoot enthusiasts, because, like all the other conferences and events that are held around the nation, on a yearly basis, that, like Dr. Meldrum speaks at a lot of them. There's a lot of people out there doing a lot of good work, and, sooner or later, like I say, someone's going to hit pay dirt. But I'm not in it for money. I mean, it would be nice to get bigger numbers at a conference, and that's why we might move it, the big conference next year, to Coeur d'Alene. Thinking about doing that. I'll probably make the announcement in the next month or so, once we make the decision and make it final. But, if we get more people to come to the thing, it would just be more fun. Like I went to the Estes Park Bigfoot Days Festival for a day at a booth up there back on April 26th, Saturday, April 26th, and spent a whole day there with Pat, my friend. That's another member of Big, and all we did was pitch the conference, and we had so much fun, and it was really pretty edifying to meet people that opened up and told me about their accounts that were very personal with their sightings. Like I had one guy and his wife just started talking about this incident sighting they had one night coming back from a camping trip. And it was really funny because you could tell that the husband wasn't too happy standing behind her that she was telling me the story. But, stuff like that, it's like anything else. It's a scientific pursuit, in my opinion. And that's the way we're keeping it in Big. And I know that there's a lot of other stuff that's being, brought in and paralleled with Sasquatch and the Bigfoot enigma. But, I talked to Dr. Meldrum about that when he was here last month briefly. An enigma is an enigma. And we really don't know, what's fact or fiction until we scientifically prove it otherwise, or, substantiate it through, legitimate scientific evidence. So I'm not a scientist and a professor like him, but, feeding off of him like I do, and I admit that I do, I keep it at that level, and that's what we're all about, is edification, enlightenment, education, and hopefully a monumental, like I told him, other people, maybe we'll hit pay dirt, and somebody else out there is going to hit pay dirt one day, and we're going to be here to be a part of it and share it with the public and other Bigfoot enthusiasts. Yep.
So, Dan, what do you see in your future? Do you have any other expeditions that are planned, either short-term or long-term?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to continue to work the northern Colorado area this summer. And like I said, I just got back from 4 or 5 days up there Tuesday night, which was a pretty phenomenal trip. And on the next show, if we do another one, I've got some video of an incident that I recorded that's really going to blow people's minds, because it's not Bigfoot related, but we'll share it on the next show. But yeah, I do have other expeditions. As a matter of fact, I might go down to Red River next week, because that's what I do. I work Red River and I work, Hunts Beach, Columbine, those two areas. And like I said, I go out at sunset and come home at like 3, 4 in the morning. There's been a couple times I came home at sunrise and, had a pretty fruitful night. But yeah, I've got other expeditions planned for those 2 AOIs, we call it. And that's the only place we're working. We've got some other stuff in the work with Eric and Sylvia. I was supposed to meet with them on Sunday, but I can't get down there on Sunday right now. But yeah, I got a whole year and a schedule laid out. And another thing, I don't try to stay in an area too long, on a continual basis, because, I think that establishes some familiarity with everything. So if you come and go randomly, you don't have a set pattern. I think that that's paying off too, with the success that we're having. So, I do have stuff planned in those 2 areas throughout the summer. And I only go up a couple times in the winter because, like other animals, when there's snow on the ground, they're not moving around too much. But I was lucky to find some of those prints up there in March, April. But we'll just keep working those 2 areas, going up there, when I do. And I go up once or twice a month, and I got other stuff to do with Big. And, I'm retired. So I like to go fishing in the summer and camping and stuff like that and hiking. So I throw that in there too to enjoy myself. So I kind of like mix business with pleasure. You know what I mean?
Well, Dan, let me say this. We've already spoken a couple of times at length, a couple of phone calls that went for an hour, a couple hours.
Yeah.
You are always welcome back whenever you have any take that you'd like to let everybody see or display. Give me a buzz, and we'll put it on. We'll get you on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure to see, folks. I told you. I told you, and I told you, and then I told you that he is a cool cat. He is a really unique, well-educated, hugely rounded guy with all sorts of training, education, experience that he brings to the venue that very damn few. I wouldn't. I don't. I'll be the first to admit this is beyond my purvey, but it's with the digital world that I get to have great people on like Dan Toth and be able to speak to them. And you are always invited back anytime, every time.
It's been a pleasure to be here, and I hope that all the people out there, thanks for your remarks and comments. And I do have some audio recordings. I do use an audio recorder. I've heard some verbalizations out there. Even my friend heard with me that were mind-boggling. I mean, sheesh. When you hear these things, what I call night screams, that's what I call them. Like I said in that Bobcat Pass video from October 23, I wish I would have had audio of that for people to hear it. But, I've heard elk. I've even heard female mountain lions in heat, doing the old mating call, come and get me and everything.
That'd be exciting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, if you've ever heard a mountain lion female, letting all the boys know she's ready to mate, that's a hell of a sound to hear, especially at night or during the day. But, if you've been out in the boondocks and you're a huntsman, you're a hunter or an outdoorsman or any type of avid sportsman, you know what you're listening to. And when you hear something that, literally goes, and it's about 1,000 times louder than that, I mean, there's been a couple times in the night where I just stood there and I went, what the hell was that? I mean, it's like, so they're out there and they're real, and keep up the good work. I use the cliche, keep up the faith, because sooner or later, you're at a campsite, like somebody said earlier, you just sit at your campsite and they always come near. I know that they like s'mores. Just joking.
S'mores.
Get some s'mores going, or some beef jerky, or they like moose drool. If you ever drank moose drool beer, you got to put out a can of moose drool. We'll go for that. And if you're out there together, this is my advice on a comedic level, a little light enlightenment here and light-hearted stuff. If you're out there together and you got a camera and one of them grabs you by the ankles, starts using it as a tree knocker, make sure your partner doesn't stop filming, okay? Because you want to put that on YouTube when it's over.
Hell, you want to make your death at least worth something that was archived for posterity.
Right, because I like to joke around. I got a sense of humor. I know I can be serious at times, but that would be great to see one grab you by the ankles and use you as a tree knocker. Have your friend film it, put it on YouTube. But anyway, I'm just joking. But yeah, keep up the good work, and it has been a distinctive pleasure to be on here tonight. And I hope everybody has a good week and happy hunting and whatever you're doing. And I hope you enjoyed the show. And I was really, really happy and pleased and privileged and honored to be here to share everything with you like we did. And, have at it. Keep up the good work big time.
Oh, yeah. Dan Toth, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. And to Dan and everyone else, thank you for being here. Thank you for staying up so late at night. Because let's see, right now it is 1:20 in the morning on the East Coast. It's like, holy crap. So Dan, thanks for being here. God bless, take care, and be safe. And that way it's time for, I think, so that means this, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Thanks for listening to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media North Idaho studio, singular. And thanks to everybody who was watching on X, on Twitch, on KLRN, on Rumble, and to all the people who unfortunately weren't able to watch live, because I always love doing live stuff. And to the people, I get a great number of folks who watch in podcasts. So when this wraps up on Rumble and on YouTube, and I will ship it out tomorrow as a podcast, you can watch the show. You will have a grand and great time. And that's exactly why I say something similar to promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, also Shure and Electro Voice microphones, the people that manufacture my Board Arrakis, and Pratt & Whitney engines producing thrust. You can